If just 5 minutes of chaos on a crowded flight deck could obliterate an empire's irreplaceable air armada, how fragile is even the mightiest war machine? At 10:20 on the morning of June 4th, 1942, amid the vast emptiness of the Pacific, flames erupted across 3 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, in a synchronized inferno that claimed over 250 aircraft and more than 2,000 elite crewmen before sunset. These were no ordinary ships. They were the proud veterans of Pearl Harbor, crewed by pilots, forged through years of grueling training, the backbone of Japan's naval aviation, yet in a single day, often remembered as overnight, in the relentless tempo of war they vanished, taking with them the momentum of an unstoppable empire. Victory disease had blinded Admiral Nagumo's command, turning precise doctrine into deadly hesitation. This is the story of Midway, how rearming in chaos during those fateful 5 minutes doomed Japan's elite aviators, proving that intelligence and timing triumph over steel and numbers. Rearming in chaos, that fatal indecision would shatter the Kido Butai forever. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea or just some water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. Within the marbled halls of Tokyo's Naval General Staff, triumph had curdled into a perilous complacency, a condition they would bitterly term victory disease. Endless successes, from the smoking ruins of Pearl Harbor to the swift conquest of Southeast Asia, bred an unshakable conviction. America lacked the will, the spirit, for a protracted naval war. Lieutenant Commander Minoru Genda, the brilliant architect of the Hawaii raid, dismissed U.S. resolve outright, proclaiming their pilots mere factory boys, unfit for the samurai rigor of carrier combat. Critics who dared whisper caution were sidelined as defeatists. Dissent was recast as disloyalty. Even Yamamoto, the Harvard-educated strategist who understood America's latent might, bowed to mounting pressure from operations chief Mitsuo Fuchida and others clamoring for one final, crushing blow. This hubris crystallized in Operation MI's labyrinthine blueprint, a symphony of synchronized strikes as elegant on the chart table as it was brittle in execution. Nagumo's first air fleet, 4 irreplaceable carriers, 248 aircraft strong, would pulverize Midway's defenses at dawn, reserving a strike force for any American ships that dared appear. Scouts would fan out in precise arcs, invasion troops would follow under cruiser screens, and Yamamoto's distant battleships would seal the victory. The plan gleamed with precision. Anti-aircraft doctrine prioritized clean, rearmed decks. Long-range Zeros enforced outranging supremacy. Yet it hinged on flawless timing, no margin for enemy surprises, no contingency for the fog of reconnaissance. Rearming cycles, fuel logistics, and bomb handling assumed an enemy too weak to exploit the gaps. Nagumo, a cautious tactician scarred by early war frictions, trusted this machinery implicitly. Victory disease whispered that such elegance was destiny. Yamamoto fretted privately their training pipeline could not replace elite pilots quickly. Industrial output paled against Detroit's rivers of steel, but publicly, he committed. The fleet sortied from Hashirajima on May 27th, shrouded in radio silence, hearts buoyed by the myth of inevitability. They believed they were the hunters. In truth, they were already the hunted, their rigid doctrine a noose tightening with every mile toward Midway. That overconfidence would soon demand a price in fire and steel, where 5 minutes of indecision turned supremacy into catastrophe. Far from the thunder of engines and the salt spray of carrier decks, a shadow war unfolded in the dim fluorescence of Pearl Harbor's Station Hypo, a cramped, windowless basement where America's true weapon took shape. Commander Joseph Rochefort, gaunt and chain-smoking amid stacks of intercepted dispatches, led a cadre of cryptanalysts, sifting the Japanese Navy's JN-25 code like archaeologists unearthing a foe's secrets. Since Pearl Harbor, they had recovered enough codebooks and additives to glimpse fragments, references to a massive operation targeting AF. Washington speculated Hawaii or the West Coast. Rochefort insisted Midway. His audacious proof? Midway radioed an open distress about freshwater shortages. Days later, Japanese signals buzzed. AF is short of water. The peace is locked. AF was Midway. Nimitz had his target and the timetable. This intelligence workflow transformed passivity into predation. Hypo plotted Nagumo's order of battle. 4 carriers confirmed. Scouts' launch windows deduced from traffic analysis. Yet intel alone was a half measure. Scouting would bridge the gap. Us. PBY Catalinas, lumbering night flyers from Midway, pierced the pre-dawn gloom on June 3rd, spotting Nagumo's veins faintly on the horizon. By dawn, June 4th, as 108 Japanese planes hammered Midway's runways, American submarines like Nautilus shadowed the fleet, feeding position pings. Nagumo's own scouts lagged disastrously. 1B-5N Kate departed 90 minutes late due to mechanical woes, its report garbled by radio discipline. Japanese doctrine favored tight emissions control, blinding their own eyes while hypo feasted on leaks. Radar? Primitive at best, absent on carriers. The aha moment electrified Nimitz's war room. Japan believed America blind and broken. Instead, Enterprise, Hornet, and the resurrected Yorktown lurked at Point Luck. 200 miles northeast, a floating ambush scripted from codebooks. Rochefort's team had flipped the script, turning Yamamoto's lure into a noose. Scouting asymmetry sealed it. U.S. Eyes everywhere, Japanese gaze narrowed by hubris and haste. Nagumo steamed toward annihilation, unaware his deck's fatal vulnerability waited only a timing exploit away. Rearming in chaos would ignite the trap Hypo had so meticulously set. As the first crimson streaks painted the horizon on June 4th, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo committed to his opening gambit, turning Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu into the wind. 108 aircraft Zeros slicing the air. Vals and Kates, heavy with ordnance, roared aloft at 4:30 a.m., bound for Midway's slumbering runways. Below decks, reserve planes stood primed with torpedoes and anti-ship bombs, a hedge against the slim chance of American carriers appearing. Nagumo's fleet, majestic in formation, pressed within striking range, confident in their veil of surprise. Yet unseen, 200 miles to the northeast at Point Luck, Admiral Raymond Spruance held his breath on Enterprise's bridge, his 3 carriers coiled like vipers in the vast blue. Nimitz's preparations had been a masterclass in calculated risk, the gamble of a commander who trusted codebreakers over caution. Yorktown, patched in Pearl's miracle 72-hour frenzy, sailed with Enterprise and Hornet, their 233 Dauntlesses, Avengers, and Wildcats itching for vengeance. Spruance, the professorial tactician, positioned them beyond Nagumo's scout arcs, conserving fuel and altitude for the decisive stroke. Dawn patrols from Midway PBYs already vectored by Hypo confirmed the quarry. Japanese carriers, bearing 320, distance 700. The trap hinged on patience, U.S. Doctrine allowed flexibility, pilots trained for long hunts, logistics streamlined for rapid rearming. Nagumo's rigidity, by contrast, chained him to scripted strikes. Then the board tilted. Marine defenders on Midway clawed skyward in obsolescent buffaloes and wildcats, stinging the first wave but crumpling under zero fangs. The strike leader radioed back. Midway requires a second attack. Nagumo faced the fork rearm reserves for land bombs or hold for ships. He chose the island, igniting the rearming cycle. As torpedo squadrons launched from Spruance's carriers, Waldron's VT-8 from Hornet pressing low and suicidal, the trap snapped taut. Fighters dragged seaward, decks twisted evading wakes, skies cleared for McCluskey's reckoning. The ambush was armed. 5 minutes of Japanese vulnerability yawned open. Rearming in chaos now beckoned doom. Aboard Akagi's bridge, Admiral Nagumo stared at the horizon, the morning sun glinting off Midway's distant smoke plumes. His first strike had bloodied the atoll, runways cratered, hangars ablaze, but the enemy airfield stubbornly endured, its fighters rising like hornets from the wreckage. The returned air crews, circling low on fumes, demanded clean decks. Doctrine was ironclad. Below, chaos erupted as armored decks heaved. Ordnance crews in sweat-soaked whites wrestled 550-pound contact-fused bombs from magazines, swapping torpedoes for anti-fortification loads, fuel hoses snaking across hangar bays amid the acrid tang of aviation gasoline. Elevators jammed midway, carts screeched in reverse, the symphony of preparation turning discordant. Nagumo hesitated, then ordered the rearmament Midway first. At 9:20 a.m., fate intervened. A belated scout, Kate, airborne 90 minutes late, crackled over the radio. Enemy carriers sighted, northeast. Panic rippled through the task force. Orders reversed in a frenzy, torpedoes hauled topside anew, half-rearmed planes shunted aside, decks a labyrinth of explosives and vapors. Japanese carrier doctrine, masterful in rehearsal, buckled under real-time flux. No radar pierced the haze. Combat air patrol tangled low chasing U.S. torpedo shadows. Waldron's VT-8 Devastators had plunged into annihilation, every plane a pyre, but their sacrifice burned precious minutes. Zero's fuel drained at sea level, carriers maneuvering wildly, skies above a vacuum. Nagumo's reserves, meant to pounce, festered vulnerable. Technical constraints compounded command friction. Bomb trucks bottlenecked, pilots ditched from exhaustion, seconds hemorrhaging into vulnerability. Time bled away. McCluskey's Enterprise dive bombers, hearts pounding after hours aloft, crested the clouds at 10:20. Below sprawled the Japanese heart decks awash in fueled Zeros, bombs clustered like kindling. The error crystallized. 5 minutes of fatal indecision had transformed precision killers into floating tinderboxes. Suspense crested as bomb bays yawned open. The hammer blow loomed. Rearming in chaos had primed the catastrophe. High above the shimmering Pacific at 10,000 feet, Commander Wade McCluskey wrestled his Dauntless's stick, fuel gauges flickering perilously low after fruitless sweeps. Enterprise's air group teetered on the brink, turn back or press the gamble. A lone Japanese destroyer knifing at flank speed caught his eye. Its wake screamed pursuit. Diving through scattered clouds, McCluskey emerged into pandemonium. Nagumo's carriers lay exposed, black anti-aircraft puffs blooming futilely, decks writhing under returning planes and rearming frenzy. At 10:22 a.m., he keyed the radio. "Roll in!" 37 SBD Dauntlesses hurled over, wings flashing in the sun as they plummeted into 70-degree dives, wind screaming through open bomb bays. Kaga shuddered first. Lieutenant Dick Best's 1,000-pounder pierced her mid-deck amid fueled Aichi D-3As and bomb carts, igniting a cataclysmic chain reaction. Orange fireballs cascaded through her hangar, swallowing 18 aircraft in seconds, secondary blasts hurling debris skyward as crewmen leapt into boiling seas. Moments later, Akagi absorbed 4 hammer blows. One bomb lodged amid Zeros and torpedoes, detonating in a geyser of flame that warped her flight deck into a twisted pyre. Soryu, pride of the fleet, took 3 penetrations forward. Her hangar erupted, engulfing torpedo reloads and dooming 718 souls before she listed into the abyss. In 5 shattering minutes, 10:24 to 10:29, 3 carriers, architects of Pearl Harbor, were mortally gutted, over 150 planes incinerated on deck, elite pilots trapped aloft or drowning in oily infernos. Nagumo fled to cruiser crutches, but Hiryu endured under Rear Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi's iron will. Her counterstrike roared forth at noon, 3 bombs raking Yorktown's vitals, halting the Yankee carrier in smoking agony. Damage parties rallied heroically, pumps thundering back flames within hours. Yet Yamaguchi pressed a second wave of Vals and Cates at 2:30 p.m., slammed 2 torpedoes home, flooding Yorktown's innards. As twilight bled purple, Enterprise's Avengers returned the verdict. Bombs stove Hiryu's deck, fires raging unchecked. Yamaguchi chose death with his ship, going down as she capsized. By nightfall, all 4 carriers lay vanquished, Mikuma crippled by follow-ups. Japan had sortied 261 aircraft, 250 plus were erased, burned, ditched, or entombed alongside 2,500 crewmen, their training pipeline's finest severed in irreplaceable hemorrhage. Torpedo Squad's sacrifice had bought the window, intel had set the stage. Rearming in chaos delivered the annihilation. As dusk cloaked the Midway approaches on June 4th, the Pacific bore witness to Empire's unraveling. Akagi listed silently, her Emperor's crane motif charred. Kaga and Soryu had already slipped beneath the waves, dragging 1,500 souls and scores of aircraft into the depths. Hiryu, defiant to the last, succumbed to unrelenting fires by evening, Yamaguchi's final order a salute to the rising sun. By June 7th, cruiser Mikuma joined them, pounded by vengeful Dauntlesses. Japan's tally: 4 fleet carriers obliterated, 261 aircraft lost over 150 inches deck infernos alone, and 3,057 lives extinguished, 2,500 from the carriers. A butcher's bill of elite aviators unequaled in naval history. Planes aloft, denied sanctuary, ditched into swells or fell to fighters. Survivors clung to rafts amid oil slicks, the ocean claiming most. The devastation transcended steel. Japan's naval aviation, the Kido Butai, was no mass-production machine. Its pilots were hand-hewn through 2-year crucibles of gunnery, formation flying, and carrier traps, veterans whose loss crippled the training pipeline. Replacements arrived green, attrition grinding expertise into oblivion. Logistical ripples compounded the blow. torpedoes irreplaceable until 1943, fuel strained across a sprawling perimeter. America mourned Yorktown and 307 dead, yet Enterprise and Hornet steamed unscathed, factories berthing Essexes monthly, pilots minted in waves. Strategically, Midway snapped the offensive spine. Yamamoto withdrew, his decisive battle a phantom. Japan pivoted to desperate defense, island hopping reversed. Guadalcanal loomed 2 months hence, testing attrition America was built to win. The rearming blunder had not merely sunk hulls, it eviscerated the human capital that defined supremacy. In one day's chaos, hubris yielded to inexorable tide. Midway's echoes reverberated through the Pacific War, handing the initiative to America and condemning Japan to a defensive spiral from Guadalcanal's mud in August 1942 to the Marianas Turkey Shoot in 1944, where fresh Essex-class hordes overwhelmed rookies flying from depleted decks. Factories in Detroit and Seattle outpaced Yokohama, pilots graduated by the thousand, while Japan's elite cadre lay forever stilled beneath coral graves. The empire that stunned Pearl Harbor faced attrition it could not endure, culminating in firestorms over Tokyo and twin mushroom clouds. 3 truths endure from those flames. First, victory disease blinds. Hubris dismissed intel warnings and overcomplicated plans. Second, carrier warfare turns on minutes rearming doctrine, exploited by flexible foes, proves rigid fragility. Third, steel rebuilds, but aviators do not. Midway severed Japan's irreplaceable spine, tilting history. Intel and timing vanquished numbers, as hypo proved codebreakers deadlier than dreadnoughts. Rearming in chaos, that fatal 5 minutes doomed an air armada, etching a military maxim, indecision invites inferno. Today, Midway whispers across the waves. Empires crumble not in grand clashes, but in overlooked moments of hesitation, where the human edge clarity amid fog rewrites fates. The cost was 2,500 lives and 250 planes, paid in one night's conflagration. A solemn reminder that war's true arbiters are neither admirals nor aircraft, but the inexorable clock of consequence.